how to make sure that we concentrate on facilitation tips that help everyone to feel included in a meeting, what makes a meeting successful. So with these topics, we will conclude the event with a mini workshop with a little action planning exercise so that you can also translate all these great tips into what you would like to do in 2022. So stay tuned for that. And also with that, it's my pleasure to kick off the panel. So let me welcome and introduce everyone in the panel for you today. First, we are welcoming Jani Harnish, partner and director of BCG Digital Ventures. He's not just an innovation and product executive, but an award-winning designer and an investor who launched over 35 B2B and B2C products in 27 countries. Welcome, Jani.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Our second panelist is Giulia Cappelletti, Innovation Design Lead and Facilitator at Accenture the Doc, who wrote Accenture's hybrid working point of view for the Global R&D Center. Thank you, Giulia, for being with us.
Thank you for inviting me. Nice to meet you all.
And then we are happy to have Elsa Alves, Principal Product Manager at Oracle for the CPQ Cloud, who is a solution seeker, results-focused, kind and empathic team leader. Thank you, Elsa.
Thank you for having me.
And then we are welcoming Tshepo Matjila, Senior Manager and Design Thinking Competence Lead at IQbusiness, South Africa's largest management consulting firm. Tshepo is leading design thinking client projects on the African continent. Thank you, Tshepo, for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
And finally, I'm happy to introduce Elvira Kalmar, co-founder and organization design lead at Go Beyond Project. Her certified course on solution-focused organization design is for facilitators globally. And I'm honored that she's also facilitating our Be-novative Partner Hub Spark Creativity sessions. Thank you, Elvira.
Thank you, everyone.
And welcome, everyone. We would like to get to know you as well in the chat. So if you are brave enough and willing to share with us your name, where you are joining from, and if you would like to use this occasion maybe as a networking event and would like to share your LinkedIn URL, we are happy to get in touch and the like-minded people can connect at the end of the event. So feel free to briefly introduce yourself in the chat. And since this is a webinar event, we will keep the cameras and also the microphone off, but we will soon kickstart the conversation. And if you have any questions, feel free to use the Q&A. We will collect all the questions in the Q&A, and the end of the discussion in like 5 to 10 minutes, we will try to answer as many of your questions as needed. And in the Q&A, you can also check out others' questions and you can vote on them. So we will see which ones are the most interested, popular ones that are leveling up. And I think that's all that we need to know before we jump in. So let me start with the first question. I would like to ask all of you in the panel, what has changed since 2020 when the pandemic hit for you within your company? Or what kind of change do you see with your clients' companies? Are there any new practices, trends that you start seeing and using often? And first, can I ask you, Elsa?
Okay. Well, for started, when the pandemic hit and we were mandated to stay at home, so working from home, that wasn't that unusual for me because fortunately in my different roles that I've been taking in the last few years, been traveling a lot and always have the flexibility to work from home when I felt like I wanted to, or it would work best for me because maybe I would be hosting a lot of webinars or things like that. So that wasn't a big impact, but in terms of a routine. But what I felt the most is that because of not being able to go to the office and workshop with colleagues, workshop with customers, go and travel and meet them, I think that a lot was lost in the sense that, you know, that during a session on Zoom, for example, although now it is a lot easier to book meetings because everyone is at home and it's a lot easier to find a slot that works for everyone. And maybe you, instead of flying a meeting for an afternoon, you do several half-an-hour meetings, but then you lost all those one-on-ones kind of moments during the coffee break, after this, the meeting, during the drinks, after the workshop, that are so important for both sides, you know, because one, and you were talking about the empathy and the relationship that you can build with people, right? Not only with the customer or the partner, but also with the colleagues that you travel with and you work with. But also because I feel that sometimes, or very often, people restrain themselves to speak out during a session with a big audience or with other people listening to, right? So I think that in terms of the biggest impact that I felt was exactly stop having access to people in that way, to have those aside conversations that will help to clarify something that was said or not said during the meeting that are so relevant, so important. And no matter whether if it is a customer, a partner, or a colleague, as I was saying.
And how about for you, Tshepo? What has changed since the pandemic started?
It just caught me as I was gulping my last bit of water. I think for us, what we see is definitely a lot more trust that has been digitized from, you know, I want to see you here 8 hours a day, 9 to 5, to I trust that you're doing that work. I mean, before, you had to produce mountains and mountains of, you know, that you were actually working when you were not in the office. So COVID actually made managers to pivot from that quite quickly. And perhaps it's also a function of the technology that also made it relatively easy for people to actually trust that employees actually are working when they say they're at home. So I think I'm seeing a lot more remote-based trust than before the pandemic, which was something very, very difficult for managers who were used to the traditional sense of, you know, managing by walking around, seeing people, seeing bodies, and collaborating on the floor. So definitely technology and trust has really, really shifted how employees can now work.
Thank you, Tshepo, definitely. And how about you, Elvira? What kind of change have you seen?
I mean, maybe first I start how it changed my work, because that's the interesting part, how my work changed, and actually that changed my clients' work as well. So me being a consultant and teaching organization design, I think what this past year has brought is definitely the confidence to go international. Whereas before, I was thinking of starting my programs and doing consultancy work a little bit abroad as well, but maybe in a few years' time. With everything going online, it suddenly made things possible. So to run my courses online, make it available globally. And the other thing that I have seen, which is also very interesting, that of course we knew for a long time that working online, remote working, distance working is possible, that we have the tools for it. But of course, we, and especially our clients or my clients, had a lot of I would say self-limiting beliefs. Can you run, for example, a transformation program or an organization development or design program remotely? Nah, we can work from home and do our everyday work, but really to transform your company? Nah. And this is what actually now happened with client after client. And they are discovering that actually not just work, but transformation or continuous transformation is also possible in the online space, in the remote space. And these type of works do not definitely need us to be present on a workshop in the same room. Now we don't even need a workshop sometimes to do this type of work. So there's really a kind of a huge evolution of what we knew as professionals is possible. Now it's becoming possible on the market as well. And I think with that, our braveness is sort of growing with the things we are ready or happy to experiment with. And just one little example, I remember a year ago having this thoughts, doubts of, can you put an online course and make it a full day course and then the next day another full day? And no, I mean, people may not be able to pay attention, to listen, to sit in front of their laptops all day. Is that a question nowadays to anyone? No. So I think we all were kind of on a speed school or speed experimenting learning phase of discovering what else is possible and what else actually the digital tools enabled us to make possible in these days. So there's a lot of change in our profession also, how we teach and also how we embark on change processes, on transformations, and it's rewriting the profession a little bit as well, which is super exciting.
Thanks so much, Elvira. Jani, you were nodding a lot. What's your point? What kind of change have you seen?
Yeah, I totally echo a lot what Elvira was talking about, primarily because where we come from, where we build businesses, then we also do this with clients. So a lot of the things change. I think remarkably what changed a lot just to, the start of the COVID was the tools that we required. Like we need Miro, we need bigger screens, we need a laptop, and so I think there's a fundamental shift on how people have now been used to these tools, which was required for collaboration. And if you now take these away from them, you'll definitely see the pinch. But there was like a small minor point. I think the biggest thing that actually changed was on the collaboration front, where I think COVID was probably the biggest empathy builder that I have seen, from CEOs all the way to interns or new joining people who challenged, how things used to work in a certain industry, and they totally flipped the book on that. And fundamentally, it meant three things. Firstly, work life was less about the balance, it was more about a blend, because you had so many different people, different life stages. And so it was more about managing your energy more than the time. And I think because of that work-life blend, we were able to create better boundaries and better empathy for the people we were working with, including the client side. The second thing that really changed was the methods we used to use for ideation, collaboration, communication aspects, that fundamentally changed. And so that took a while for folks, but I think it's got to set up a new normal. And so now it's going to be very difficult to kind of retrogress back to very different ways of working. People would really question, like, really, do you want me to come all the way there for the store meeting? Why can't we just do it over email or Zoom or Slack? And I think the third thing was around affiliation. I think that was probably the biggest one. How do we get newcomers excited? How do we share them in an apprenticeship-based work culture? How do you really help educate somebody on use the craft of design, not just the tools of design? So I think the tools, the methods, and in the collaboration aspects all change with the notion of work-life blend.
Thanks, Jani. And Giulia, what do you think about the biggest changes since the pandemic started?
I agree with all of the considerations, and I was just taking some notes, and I heard words like, trust, confidence, like being in a people business, needing to network, to build that relationship. And I think what all of these considerations make me think about is that people used to have an office persona and a home persona. And now these two worlds are sort of blended right now. And I think it's allowing us from one side to see things a little bit differently. And so actually is helping us to put ourselves in our client's shoes. And so to Elsa's point, yes, it's more difficult to find those moments of connection, particularly during session if they're virtual, but actually having a dog coming into a frame, it's actually making us discover new things about our clients and about our team members, which I think are fascinating, and that are allowing us to the point of Tshepo to build a new trust and a different type of trust, which I think it's also quite insightful. And to the point then that if I think about my team and the transition that we had to do, yes, we had to learn so many new skills and actually upskills ourselves and learn so many new remote tools to the point of Jani, which was a fascinating growth journey. But if I need to reflect about it, even before the pandemic, we were using a lot of those tools, but we were not using them with the same intentions that we are doing right now. And so what the pandemic, I think, has allowed us to do is, and also our clients, is to make us actually think as an organization, how well are we set up to do all of that? And not just when it comes to the tech and the tools and the infrastructure, but actually in terms of our ways of working, the processes, the skills, all of the things that are there in place. And it has allowed us to play a little bit and to adopt a little bit of a experimental mindset and be a bit more free in the type of mistakes that we do, because there is no blueprint. And that has helped, particularly in innovation, our work, because just you can notice that team members, but also clients, have just adopted a much more experimental mindset, which is fascinating to see. So for me, that is one of the biggest changes.
I 100% agree with everything that you said, and thank you so much for summarizing so well what other people also said. It makes me think that we have to admit that although these amazing new things, kindness, empathy come into the picture, experimentation, some people are feeling the other side of the coin, too much stress, burnout, and we even read a lot about the great resignation that is happening today. So I'd like to ask, what's your point of view? Why people are quitting their jobs in numbers that are frightening? Where do you think they go? And why is this happening? So Elsa, what do you think? What's your point on that?
I think that, as Giulia was saying, and others, we had the opportunity to, while interacting with others, to see that other, a much more human side of people. But also, I think it gave us a good opportunity to look inside, look inwards, right? So I think that one of the major drivers, and I'm sure that everyone has a different reason to do so, was to look at this situation and ask themselves, do I want to keep spending my time working in this project, in this company, in this environment? And maybe it's not because, things were horrible or whatever, but maybe having that point to stop and think. And as Elvira and Giulia was saying, that people taking chances and going for maybe, I've been thinking about doing this for such a long time. Now I want to do it. Now I go for it. And I'm seeing like colleagues and people in my network that go for instance, for projects that are more humanizing or more oriented to help certain people with certain challenges. I'm thinking, for examples of software solutions that are dedicated for senior people, right? Or because they are more focused on education, or because much more human-centric kind of projects. I think that we saw this pandemic bringing the best and the worst in people for sure. And a lot of them, I believe, if they didn't feel like where they were, they either weren't being recognized on what they were doing, or they thought that maybe they could focus their time on a different project with a better good, if you want to put it that way. And they just took the challenge, as Elvira was saying, just go for it.
Yeah, absolutely interesting points. And Jani, what's your point? What do you think is happening?
Yeah, I agree with Elsa. I see people sort of leaving a job or pursuing a new opportunity as stories. Like every single person has a unique story, at least for the folks that we hired or the ones that left. It was very difficult to label saying this person left for this reason. Obviously, of course, there are some patterns that you can, try to map, but ultimately it was all about human stories. And so we talk about, lifestyle and life stage. I think those words actually became very prominent. We don't talk about like work style and work stage, right, as much as life. And so people really understood what it means to think around my life stage. Like, I'm having to take care of my elderly parents and my kids. That was a very different, life stage for someone versus expecting babies and helping them grow. There were kids at home, so they had realized that it was not even a choice, that they were forced to do that. And that meant like, wow, I can now handle a few things which earlier were not possible. So that's one aspect which I think is very important in terms of the empathy and the human side, is really understand what stories and what life stages people have been. But besides that, there have been some other reasons, like Elvira was saying, able to do more global projects. So it's like, wow, I can do a lot more entrepreneurial global work. It means my market's really opened up, instead of me hesitating to go find a market. And like, will I really be, crowded in here? So I think that changed the notion of why people were resigning and trying to do something different. Some industries got forced, right? And so they decided, wow, I can probably actually switch to a different one. Some people went back to school to get higher education. It's like, wow, I think I found my calling after 1 year of doing things and seeing, while other friends were able to do certain aspects, other colleagues were able to change careers. So that helped change. I think the last one was around just the entrepreneurial spirit of humans. And I might be entrepreneurial, I don't mean like you have to go start a new business. Like, hey, maybe I'll collaborate with someone on the side. I'll probably open up, a daycare thing, or I'll probably educate a few kids on the same time. So I think all of those notions of the human spirit really, flourished, which I think is why I think it's also a great opportunity for people to experiment new things.
Yeah, thanks, Jani. And Elvira and then Giulia, you also wanted to add something.
Yes, just briefly building on this about the ability that suddenly we're realizing that we are able to do more things than we thought before. And what I see is that actually staying at home saves for a lot of people a lot of time, travel time, that you don't have to kind of sit in your car or on a train or on a plane to go somewhere, like to your clients or go into the office. And more, I see the interesting phenomenon of the gig economy sucking in people. So it's not just whether I do what my work is or I change my work and start doing something else, but people starting to build up their portfolio. So maybe I work for the company, but I can also start a project for myself, or I can join in globally on a project that really excites me, and it doesn't require anymore me to be there. I even bumped into people recently where the guy is a professor doing his PhD. He's also a head of procurement in a company. And in the evenings, he joined a food delivery company because that's how he's doing his sport. And also he's writing his PhD about gig economy. So it's possible to kind of structure your day and imagine that work doesn't have to be at one place or at one company, but you can build your own portfolio that helps you to grow as a person. And it's going to be an interesting challenge for companies also, and about engagement and the engagement topics in the future, how we handle that.
I think some of these considerations are actually validated by some of the research that we have run very recently in Accenture. So people are reassessing what's most important in their lives and in their careers and looking for the right balance. So balance is a word that came actually out quite a lot. So people realizing that they can spend more time taking care of their families or taking care of themselves rather than actually commuting or being like traveling to like a client office. And so reassessment and reassessing and rebalancing, it's sort of some of the findings from that research. But I think from the other perspective, we're also seeing a lot of people getting hired in remote, like fully remote, like just over in the past 18 months, our team has grown of 15 new people. And so Tshepo, in the previous question, you actually mentioned trust and how teams are now forced to basically trust people to do the work in their own time and to do it in their own location. And I think that's a very interesting switch that we are seeing. And another practical example, I think now that the world is sort of much more open, where you can basically access job or leave your job and, you know, find a new one that is really right for you. It's not just any job. It's interesting to look at it from an organizational side where, for example, to attract those new 15 people from our team, we actually had to become much more specific and really intentional in what are the things that we're offering and what is our talent proposition. And might be basic to say it out loud, because yes, we were doing that before, but now the world has just so much more accessible. And so you find yourself in a much more competitive place, particularly for niche skills and niche talent, which I think it's a huge switch for organizations. So relook at like how you write roles, relook at how you write your case studies, not just for your client, but actually for your team and the people that you want to attract. Basically, this will be my call to action.
Just to add to that, like, we're now referring to the gig economy, right? I think that even the whole entire concept of job is becoming a lot more flexible, right? So people acknowledging that now I can focus my time on here and being hired for that specific role for a very specific period of time, and then just jump and go with somewhere else, do either the same thing or something very different. So as you said, Giulia, like that flexibility, the barriers that completely dropped with this remote work as a standard, I think is creating a true revolution in the way that employers see employees and how they hire and how long the employees will potentially continue to stay either within the company or just in the same role, right? Having the ability to and think about like, no, I want to go and do that instead, and having that more flexibility. And I strongly believe that it will make us a lot more happy.
Thanks, Elsa. Yes, me too. And I was also wondering, as you were speaking about the gig economy and also much more experimentation and entrepreneurial mindset that can be within the company, even within our personal lives. Would it mean that the boundaries of companies are becoming more flexible and more agile, or even beyond agile? So what kind of shift or transformation do you see within companies, and does it require any specific focus from the company to start embarking on this journey to support people in their entrepreneurial spirit? Elvira, you are nodding.
Yes, it's I think such a wonderful period of time, because of course the question is yes, and in some ways it's not that we are discovering something new, but we are becoming more aware of what we should have been aware earlier also. So no company has its walls around only its employees. But still, when we are talking, especially I work a lot on the field of HR and employee engagement, we still like to see the group of people who are employed by our company as our company. That's the walls of it. Though if you look a little bit closer to any company, you're actually creating value with a group of subcontractors, partners. So we are all in business ecosystems anyway. But maybe we did not see that as clearly, or we were not that aware of it until now. And I think what I also see that this period of time also helped us to understand that with work and how we plan work, we also lived in some sort of unjustified theory that work is a continuous and a safe and the same thing. And for decades, we know, and we've been talking about even the waves or phases of every single work is fluctuating, not just in its intensity, but what it is about when you talk about one topic. And still, with knowing that, and especially on my field in organization design, still companies designed themselves like almost for eternity, but if not, then at least for 4 or 5 years upfront. And when we had a transformation, then we designed it for the next coming years, and then try to live by that design in those coming years. And what became very visible in the last year is that things change a lot faster. And especially because people are at home, it became also more visible, this fluctuation in the content of your work and how that is changing. And in a wonderful way, it invited lots of companies, teams, units to start having these conversations of what we can call agility, actually. What is it that we are working on now? Not in 2 years' time, not in 5 years' time, maybe not even 6 months' time. I mean, if you look back, none of us really knew what will be possible in a month or in 2 months' time. And has that really changed compared to what was before? The certainty hasn't changed, but our awareness about the uncertainty has changed a lot. And I see that more and more teams, units are actually using their monthly or weekly meetings instead of reporting and target setting, more and more about what I call is the agile way of organization design, focusing on, okay, how far do we see into the future? Is it 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 1 month, 3 months? What is it that we want to achieve in that time? So what is the work that we need to do? And then how we are going to do that. So being a lot more short-term in designing or defining who is doing what and how we are doing that is actually making every single team, company, unit who is doing it like this a lot more agile, because you're not planning for something unknown, something invisible. And I would say that just by the single practice of having these short-term goal setting and building in some sort of retrospectives, what we are doing and how we are doing and how we can do it better, just building in these learning curves regularly into your everyday work as a team, you've already done the biggest step towards agility and adaptivity. So it doesn't require a lot to sum it up. It requires time and space when we talk about this and clarify. And coming back to the engagement topic, I was kind of scratching a little bit in my previous comment. This is actually what helps people to be able to engage. If I understand what our team is working on, if I understand what my role is in that work right now, then I can define, I can advocate for myself how I can do that best from my home or wherever I am working from. So it creates actually a lot stronger engagement if we create space for it to be able to talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Jani, what's your point on this agile transformation?
Yeah, I think it's important to characterize, that the aspects of COVID and the time was really significantly, what's called VUCA, time of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. And so many industries pretty much, were going through some aspects of it. Some really suffered and some really kept on to it. And so for me, I think it happens in 3 different reframes. First of all is around the notion of business. Earlier companies used to talk about what should I do in my business or what should we do in our business. that fundamentally changed to what business should we be in, right? Because business has really changed. Some industries really tanked. And so instead of focusing on business plans and how you make the best business plan, it was really about business model innovation. That was like a fundamental mindset shift that happened. I think the second thing that's happened is around organizations turning into organisms. And what I mean by that is there were a lot more reach out of employees that you never knew existed, right? There were employee networks that got created. There were more affiliation happening remotely, which you never imagined would have happened because organizations, by definition, are organized in silos. And that's not how humans are, right? And I think that was more evident when you started thinking about how you could do business. That the third aspect was around a business, was working with its partners, its vendors, was always traditionally driven by a value chain. These things happen linearly. What we've seen is like the value chains have turned into value webs. It means that it's no longer linear. It means business is no longer going to happen the way it has a massive ripple effect on the way companies are organized. And I think lastly, fundamentally within the organization, I think it changed with leadership, right? Leaders had to role model a lot of those things. There's no longer able to say, oh yeah, use, X, Y, and Z tools, but then you were still doing things the old way. No longer relevant, right? Because everything was very transparent. Everyone was very vulnerable to aspects of COVID. And so I think, again, those fundamental shifts of what business we are in to what business we should be in, business plans to business models, value chains to value webs, and fundamental leadership. And I think Simon Sinek's quote really hit hard where he talked about the role of a leader is not to be in charge, it's to be caring for those who are in charge. And so the job of a leader was to grow more leaders. It was never more evident than in COVID.
Yep.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it invites another interesting research that I found. According to a Harvard research, 83% of all of the respondents say that they require some kind of hybrid form of work in the future. And I would like to ask you if you would like to translate or summarize it in just one word. I know it's really hard, but what does it mean? What are people asking for when they say, I would like hybrid work? How would you translate that, Elvira?
Yeah, I'm happy to start because in my understanding, people are asking, trust me, I am an adult. If I take responsibility for something, I will do it.
Yeah, I would totally agree. Actually, it was something that I heard some top management going like, I had no idea that everyone would be so efficient working from home. I'm like, really? Trust me, as you said, we are adults and we know what they're doing. I think I would go for flexibility. And this is where, having the chance to either go to the office when it makes sense to go to the office, but at the same time, continue to be more present for the family, knowing how to even balance your level of burnout, right? Being capable and being open to that, because that is also something that I believe that it happened was that people became a lot more aware and paying a lot more attention of the levels of burning out that everyone was experiencing. So I would go, I know it's really hard to pick only one, but I will go with flexibility.
Yes, and I see also James agrees with you. He also said flexibility. And I'm wondering, what about you, Tshepo? How would you summarize it in one word? What are people asking for?
Yeah, I think it's options. People, like I said before, you had no options but to come to the office. And now they're saying, I want to tell you when I can come to the office, and maybe just devolve the responsibility of when I need to come into a team level rather than an organizational level where it's global policies applicable to everybody irrespective of the nuances of what happens at the team level. So I think at a team level, if we've seen a lot of people moving out of the cities into the country because of the flexibility that remote first work was actually giving them. And now you say come back to the office. So I'm saying I understand your need for me to physically come and collaborate, but I need to tell you when I can actually come and do that, because guess what? Not only am I working during working hours, I also have kids in the background, maybe that I'm helping with this and that. And I actually hate the commute because now that I'm father, I don't really want to, move into the office. Maybe if you give me options as to when will it be suitable for me to actually come, then I will come in. And sometimes it doesn't even have to be at a team level where you need to collaborate. Maybe I just need, working at a predominantly I'm at home 24/7, you get cooked up, right? So you get the cabin fever. So how do I now vary my environment so that I continue being productive? Because the essence of this thing is productivity. It's not don't see Tshepo the physical, but see Tshepo the productive knowledge worker, if that's what I'm doing. The hologram should work if I can still do what I need to get done at a different country, in a different time zone, in a different kind of time than everybody else is. So the option is, I think, what hybrid work needs to actually be offering. And I think maybe we're going to start talking about the HR policy of one rather than the global HR policies, because it's going to be very, very different, especially now that you've tasted the fact that I can not see you and still do the work that you want me to do. So if you want me to come in, I'm going to give you conditions that I want you to meet. And it's not the other way around. So, the industrial 1.0 and maybe up to 3.0 was saying, this is how we want to assemble, how we want to work. And that was that moment of creation. And when Peter Thiel talks about that in business, every moment has a 0 to 1, where it moves from what was not there to a now new here. We need to now adjust the rail. So I think the hybrid thing is going to be another 0 to 1. Then that used to be the remote first that happened last March.
Yeah, thanks, Tshepo. In the meanwhile, I also see some questions coming in from the audience. So if you can check it, everyone in the audience, and see a question that is burning and you really would like to see some answers for, then vote on it. And in the meanwhile, I also like to ask Jani about what is your translation about what people want in hybrid work?
The drawback of going amongst the last ones is some of the words are already taken, but I would echo, all of that. I think for me, again, trust, flexibility, like all of those, I think the right ones. There's one word we often forget, which is situational. In my situation will change, right? So sometimes I would love to be in office because that may be the situation that demands it, because clients are new or team members are new. It requires that type of collaboration. And oftentimes, like my lifestyle might change. There might be someone falling sick. Earlier, we used to have what was called these, micro constraints and micro freedoms. Now we need to give like these macro constraints and micro freedoms around collaboration. Situations change for people as human beings. And then that's where empathy becomes important, right? I'll give a simple anecdote. If you get hit by a car and somebody's watching you, and it's like, ouch, this person may have felt hurt. That's sympathy. Going and helping that person out that's empathy. And I think part of the aspects of situation requires empathy from leadership. And I think those words go hand in hand. I think fundamentally, if you would use one word, then would be like have situational empathy, but it's two words of.
Thanks, Jani. And actually, it also invites the next topic about how to practice empathy and kindness. But before we go into that, Giulia, actually, the hybrid way of working is your expertise. Did we cover everything you think about what people are looking for, or are there any other things that companies should consider?
I think for me, like the key word, and it comes also out from our research, is autonomy, which I think covers a lot of the other words in that sense. But I've seen also in the chat, and Jani, you were talking about it before, there is a lot of change requiring the role of like leadership and managers. And I'm just thinking in this new hybrid scenario when, individuals come back to the office, but we want to keep productivity high. Like, how do we start bringing together the individual needs and then also the project team needs to keep actually our business productivity high? Because to the point of Tshepo, that's ultimately the outcome. And so managers and leaders will have to manage that, and that's kind of the role shift that will happen. And so yes, there is a certain level of autonomy to keep people happy, to actually adapt to what works best for them, that makes them actually the most productive and that really suits their need. But we will also need to manage what makes the team overall the most happy and the most productive. And so questions like, why are you coming into the office? When are you coming in? Depending on the situations that Jani was mentioning, but also thinking about for what task, for what activity, like what's the benefit ultimately? And is this a task actually that you could have performed remotely? And so what is changing for you to come into the office? And really strike the balance between, sort of the right balance between the autonomy of the individual, but also like the control that the organization somehow might take back.
Yeah, definitely. And I see in the question and answers also a question about going into more tips, how to help leaders to create a culture where everyone is engaged, even personally or virtually. So what if either a startup at a growth stage or a company transitioning toward hybrid work would like to foster more this collaborative and engaged company culture? What would be your tips? How can we practice empathy towards our team members? How to keep people engaged in workshops or just in personal connections? Giulia, you were nodding.
Yeah, I think like for me it's like two areas. Like the first one is around camaraderie. So actually be very intentional in how you plan out the sort of moments of connection and even like spontaneity. Is that how you say it in English, I think? But you need to be extremely like intentional in doing it. And so it might not be as fun as running actually, randomly into a colleague at the coffee machine. But what I've done like personally in this period is actually schedule many more like one-to-one, even short 15 minutes checkpoint with my team members. I call them like espresso coffee connect because I'm Italian. So I like that coffee reference there. We also have moments like Fun Friday. So it's 30 minutes where all of us in the team, and it's optional, we can come together and play games together. So a couple of us in the team just keep making plans of different games that we can all play together. Virtual coffee catch-ups that are random. So rather than just always meeting with the same person, you do a bit of a lottery of who actually happens to come with who. So these are more practical examples to foster that type of like togetherness. But then the second area is around building culture. And so looking actually at the values that you're trying to foster as a team and how we treat each other, which are extremely important, particularly when you have many new joiners coming on board, because you don't have anymore those belongings cues that you were picking up like in the office. So you sort of need to build them in some of the activities and initiatives that you are doing. So to give you some practical example, and then I'll pass over the ball to others here. But one of our team values is to speak candidly. And so we reinforce that by running project retros and playback, where we don't just talk about all of the things that have been positive in a project, but we really force ourselves to think about what were the bad, the uglies of a project, and really speaking candidly. Another one is we care. And so that is reinforced by how we recognize people. And so we have created this ritual, which is Year of the Month Award, where actually the team member recognize the others teammates that perhaps went above and beyond for specific things. And so I think the call to action here, because I've seen the questions in the chat there, but is to think about what are the values that you have in place and what actually behaviors are you reinforcing them based on those, and look at how you can infuse your team activities with those and put much more intention into designing them as well.
Thank you, Giulia. Elsa, can you tell us also some examples, tips?
Well, I think that Giulia listed most of them, but you know, having that personal time, that because it's so easy to, now that we are all working remotely, and as I was saying before, now it's so easy to find that half an hour in everyone's schedule, because we have these things to talk about work, that we completely forget to talk with people, just, you know, personally. How are you? Ask how they've been, you know, and as all those situations that Jani was talking about. So for instance, that booking some time and just go like, just talk about nothing, you know, like the show about nothing. I think it's so important, that help us to you know, continue to build that relationship, because we are not machines, we are not just robots in here. We need to have that space to have that appreciation, and also I think that it is very important that it's only by talking with people that then you understand what really motivates them. So as we were talking about the need of that, having the clarification of what we are here to do, right? What it is our goal, what it is our mission. And if you don't have everyone aligned, probably things won't work. But also from the point of view of knowing exactly who you have around you, it will be easier to identify what that person will potentially, what kind of role they want to play in that accomplishing of that mission, right? And opening the space for them to be candid and open about what are their intentions, what are their motivations, what are their strongest skills. So having those simulated coffee breaks and now you made me think about the metaverse that now is coming, right? So actually going and virtually meet people by the water fountain. Maybe this is crazy. The things that this kind of crisis bring in terms of innovation is always fascinates me. But I think to conclude is we need to have those moments to talk candidly, openly, allow people to say, this could have been better. And we should be taking into account that. I think it's the most important to continue and make the most of this now a lot more global, a lot more interactive kind of reality that we are living on, and that's, you know, making the most of it.
Jani?
These are fascinating tips. I'm going to obviously try a few of those myself too. And that's why this is so interesting. Couple of things, and this related to the aspects of the startup question as well. Few tips. First is intention. Intention is super important. So if you are scheduling a meeting, just make sure like it's a 20-minute meeting and not 30-minute. And then give yourself time that, hey, we still have 10 minutes. And I sometimes try to do that. Like, hey, can you stay after this meeting? I just want to check on you. How are you doing? Yeah. So you're not losing your productivity. You would have anyway spent 30 minutes discussing stuff, but like try to do that. So what I've done personally as a cohort lead is I schedule 15 minutes, very similar stuff, 3 times, 3 of them a week, right? So 15 minutes, 3 of them. So it means that by the time I've gone through 1 month, I've connected one-on-one with everyone. And there's nothing but to just check on them. How are they doing? What's going on? How's the project? Do they need any help? Secondly, this is a pet peeve of mine. Like, we should start not using the term resources and use the word talent. Human beings are talent, and so resource is a very industrial term that was created. Like, we assume like everybody's going through the same stuff, and the reason why, what it means in terms of an actual tip is, then you have your sessions where you have people share out what their talents are, and instead of we having a bigger meeting, which we used to have earlier in a big conference room, we've broken those into small chunks of 30 minutes. And so one session is really about talking business and what's the update, so that everybody has transparency on the purpose of the organization, which is how you bring alignment. Then the second one that we do are really more around community enablement, where now people are sharing out the type of work they have done. Earlier, in person, we used to see going down the hallways or in a room what type of projects are. That's difficult with Zoom, especially that red button that says leave cuts a cord right away. And so you want to orchestrate mechanisms where people share their work back. And it's very important because that is a signature, that's their craft. And the third types of meetings we have done is where it's nothing to do with business, nothing to do with work, but about your hobbies. And so we found a lot like, wow, this designer was an architect before. And so he shared his work. This person has crazy, fandom for Pokemon. And we learned a lot around how that translates to work. So people might think that this is time not invested, but you learn a lot from talent. And so I think that would be my biggest suggestion, is like, make it intentional, make it small, and really think about your employees as talent and learn from them.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jani. Tshepo, what are your tips for kindness, empathy, and just generally for leaders, startups?
Yeah, I think spot on what everyone has said. I think what I'm seeing from a people leadership perspective is people have gone back to things that they used to enjoy pre-COVID, because of now maybe they've gone out of the city into the country, they have a little bit of space, they've started crafts, they've started gardening and all this other thing. So it's important to connect beyond just the work that we do. And the work is important, right? Because that's what pays the bills for all of us. But it's important to note that people are not just work first, but they're also people with ambitions and stuff like that, like what Jani was saying. And some either stumbled here, but they actually didn't really want to be here in terms of the career switch. And getting to understand them in that way helps you build a deeper empathy for them as a leader, because you get to understand the things that drive them, and maybe in one way or another you find a way that you can either as a leader help them transition off, because that's also one of the talents that you as a leader need to have, or help them develop it for the purpose of the business that you guys are in, right? So I think that for me is something that is a new realization that has happened. And there's a friend of mine who usually asks me one question, which I always find it's very, very powerful. She always likes to say, "How are you?"
Yeah, absolutely.
And before I used to, it's small talk, but now it makes sense, because having been sick from COVID myself, I understand the intentional living, right? Knowing that you survived something that could have taken you away. And when someone asks you, "How are you?" it starts hitting different. So you really, really, and it's something that I'm trying to inculcate in some of the conversation I have with the people I lead and the people I interact with, to really, we also have an energy coach in our business, and he says, when you say namaste to someone, you say, the greatness in me wants to recognize the greatness in you. So I'm actually seeing you, right? So, and even in one of the dialects or major languages in our country, which is Zulu, they say sawubona, which means I see you, right? So how do we start seeing people not just as the employee who needs to get a deliverable done, but as someone with talent then and all these things that makes them present and important in our lives.
Yeah.
Beautiful, thank you. And finally, Elvira, what are your tips to share?
I just would like to kind of join into this what Tshepo was talking about. And I also see that Johnny Pedersen had a question about what could a startup do when it's about scaling up. And I've recently heard a wonderful practice from a startup that has been growing very, very fast, that they have every morning, they start the day together online on a social stand-up. And a social stand-up is only maximum 15 minutes. And they have various topics they kind of figure out. So they are even circulating in the team who is responsible for the morning stand-up, the social stand-up. And they have topics from what type of shoes you like till what sports you do, all sorts of fun facts they share about each other. They use the virtual tools to share these things. It kind of bumps the whole team with a wonderful energy level and feeling connected and feeling belonging. And first you connect, first connect, then content. And then they have the working stand-ups, which are in small teams already. So then they focus and turn into the work. And I just thought it's such a wonderful example of what you've been all talking about, this intention. So what was there before as a natural thing, like we gathered in the office by the coffee machine and had some fun and laughter before we started working, you can actually recreate it in the online space. It just needs a little bit of creativity and the intention, the effort, to make the effort it's to happen. Yeah, that was what I wanted to add.
I love this, and actually all of the tips, we will also adopt some of them with my team. I'm so inspired, and thank you so much for sharing so many insights, tips, and stories. And I also love the way that somehow we have seen the same world from different pictures, although we are connecting from different parts of the world. I think it's also beautiful in the way hybrid work is evolving, that although it's international and also we are away from our homes, but our world is somehow merging together to the same possibilities and same opportunities. So the world opened up for me too, and I love when I get to know you and also other people on this deeper level. So thank you so much for joining us today. And with that, I would like to say thank you and for the panelists, and for the attendees. We are also inviting you to the next session, which we are holding together with Elvira about an action planning workshop. So although we were talking about questions that were exciting for us, now we would like to bring up questions that are exciting maybe for you too. So just a little bit of maybe like a mindfulness break, 1 minute, everyone concentrating, deep breath, inhale, in and out. And when we are fully present, come back and let's think about how we can share our practices with each other in the chat. What have we seen in the hybrid world of work? What are our ideas? How to move forward in a thoughtful way? We have 5 questions, and just because of simplicity, I would would like everyone to type your answers to the chat, and we will see how similar or how different they are. So I'm asking the first question and then rolling the ball to Elvira for the second one. The first question is for all of you, that since the pandemic hit, what were memorable moments of kindness for you that made you feel your team members or boss care about you or about each other? Any memories, stories that really felt good for you or that you remember, and we will reflect on it. Elvira says that since the pandemic hit, what were the memorable
just put the
moments?
question there.
Question. Thank you. In the meanwhile, I'm asking any of you if you would like to speak up, if you have any memories that that you can still share.
I can go. I think one of the things that are the most memorable for me is that even in the office before we were celebrating, milestones for people, but since the beginning of the pandemic, we've actually started celebrating many more personal milestones, that being, moving in a new house or like a new baby. And we haven't stopped like the celebration to just say, hey, congratulations. But we have actually started sending little packs and gifts to everyone in the team. So when you receive like one of those little packages, it's just a very nice surprise, and it just makes you smile a lot.
I actually also remember getting a personal like postcard in my mailbox from our client, and I also thought it was so thoughtful, and I immediately wrote a thank you message, and we started to chat like the regular "how are you" on a deeper level kind of conversation. So although things happen virtually, sometimes when we find something physical, it feels really good. Who else has memories?
You can still share memories, and we're still hoping that in the chat, some of you just listening to this webinar are also going to share some thoughts with us.
Astrid shared that a fun online gaming event with the whole team, each of us with a nice drink and laughing a lot. I also remember a really fun event where we were drawing online, and it was like passing the ball type of drawing event, and we had to like find out what the other people were drawing, and at the end it was totally distorted. We were laughing all the time. I also really enjoy that.
And maybe this already takes us to our next question, and still feel free to type in the end of your of nice story and nice moments, memorable moment, but we're also wondering, and I'll put it into the chat as well, what hybrid team building activities have you recently had and enjoyed, or do you plan to have with your team maybe at the end of the year? So this is a little bit of collecting some hints and tips, tiny ideas that you've already experienced, like Astrid already shared with us that they had a gaming evening and each of us with a drink and laughed, and I guess probably still everybody sitting at home. What else have you had? Kind of let's build a list, because the end of the year is coming and it would be nice to celebrate in some ways together. And maybe we are hoping that you can get some inspiration from these tips and ideas also. Yeah, like Jessica recalls a simple one-to-one chat with a coworker on a Zoom, which felt great, which is, yeah, one of those memorable moments. So still memorable moments, welcome. And still hybrid team building activities. that you had fun with or you enjoyed?
My former team, because I recently moved up to this role. When the pandemic started, we started meeting weekly on Friday afternoons, and it started, you know, in the beginning was just to have that, create that no work conversation, just chill, interact with the team. Then it started evolving to have like, okay, so next week, everyone brings their favorite book. Next week, bring your favorite cartoon when you were a kid. Next week, bring your favorite band or the best concert that you went to. So those were really, really fun. And we had to have a drink. That was mandatory.
So it seems like food and drink is welcomed in these hybrid events. And I would like to share also what I see, Jani, you also preparing. So I'll just share one and then I'll give the floor to you. We've had actually a wonderful experience with cooking together in our own home. So one of our friends, actually a shared friend with Priscilla, they have a company where they deliver the ingredients to your door in many European cities now, and they lead you together the whole cooking process. So you're in your own kitchen, but you are connected on Zoom. You're all cooking either the same thing or parallelly different things. You finish with the starters together, you sit down, eat together, chit chat, have a drink. So that was also a wonderful experience. Though we couldn't be together, but this was the closest to the Christmas party kind of hanging out together experience. And we know the best chats always happen in the kitchen.
That is true.
Jani, what's your best hybrid team building experience?
Yeah, we had a lot of different things, especially with the ones who had kids. I think it was a very simple one, low effort. We had just asked a multicultural team that we have, like, you just have to anonymously put in your favorite cuisine dish. And then you have to like really match the names for somebody. So you go around the corner and say, hey, Elvira, who do you think really likes X dish? Then we were really baffled with like how much cross-continental international cuisine mix people had. And obviously got our taste buds hungry. So then ultimately you would go and get food afterwards. Just low effort. It was great. Just one small thing, which I forgot, was one of the earlier questions you asked, like, what was something very memorable that happened at the start of the pandemic for me was we were traveling. I couldn't get a mask. And a friend of mine had an extra one as a colleague, and he offered willingly to me. That was like the slightest, sweetest gesture, you know, when we were not able to get N95 masks while traveling. And so I really believe like these small things were intentional, even with the team building activity, could go a long way because of humans at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It also reminded me of one of my favorite team building activities that we always like to do around Christmas, and we call it the thank you game, which is pretty similar, that we write for each other thank you messages, like a specific stories that we remember from that year. And we sit together and pass the ball around. Everyone needs to like read out one of the thank you messages. And it always starts like, for example, Kate, thank you for, I remember that when you did this, it really felt good for me. And then Kate, the person who receives the message, need to guess who wrote it. And it's really funny because we always say like, yes, I could have wrote that too, but actually it wasn't me this time. And it feels really good that we share all of these thank yous and appreciations. Okay, and with that, we can move to the next question. And it's about maybe just with one word, if you think about your dream way of working in 5 years from now, what kind of words, adjectives come to your mind? What would you do then? How would you describe the way you are working? And we came up with this question because we would like to see how much our notion of this ideal dream world of work is changing. Do we see it pretty similarly, or are there any differences?
I can't wait to be traveling again. Honestly,
Coming in a sustainable way.
Yes, of course. But it is one of the things that I really miss about my job is the traveling. But I think that, as I was saying before, I've always had very kind of hybrid kind of work anyways, very flexible. So I hope it stays that way and it comes back to that part or where I can travel again, or being able to go and see people.
I can share a bit from mine. So for me, it would be a lot of like micro vacations, some small for relaxation, some for going checking out, because I have to align a lot with my kids' school calendar. And oftentimes it gets very difficult to do depending on projects and what they would demand. So those micro vacations would help a lot. Mini sabbaticals, because I believe we need to kind of rejuvenate a lot, sometimes take inventory stock of those in current work situations, and the way things are structured don't allow you to do that. Again, we're talking about dream scenario, taking different sabbaticals at times. Sometimes it's for upskilling, sometimes it's for going and doing whatever would be your favorite hobby and helping explore that, or go visit a new country. I think the other one would be around multi-career projects, because I like diversity of the work. It inspires me. And so if I could maybe try something over here, maybe a different geography, that would be great. For example, last year I did projects in Brazil, in Singapore, Malaysia, and then in East Coast, having lived in Los Angeles. It was great because you would never otherwise get to do that type of exposure. So I think the ability to help pick and choose on that would be great. I think lastly would be centered around life events. I've lived around the aspects of cherishing moments. And I think if you can help manage things around life moments, which are very, very precious, and have work sort of blend around that, I think for me, those are really ideal scenarios.
For me, the word is inclusion. That could be at the talent level. So making sure that we are able to actually respond to the most complex problems that will just become more and more complex from our clients, from society overall, but just with the most diverse perspective. And so inclusion is super important, and the diversity aspect, but then also thinking about, as switching to hybrid, how do we ensure that all of us are considered and included, no matter where we live or where we work or what we do. And so making sure that in 5 years from now, processes, policies are all designed with these, I would say, location inclusion in mind. That will be super important.
That is actually a very good point. And it made me think that, for instance, when I moved from Lisbon to London, at the time, that was one of the decisions, because I felt like being in Portugal, being based in Lisbon, was not exposing me enough to headhunters. And I actually did the experiment of, when I moved my location, I didn't touch my profile just to see if something different would happen, and it did. So I think that's a very good point, that now as those barriers are down and broken, and now we are a lot more global, that hopefully people will be found for their talent, for their skills, for what the value that they can bring, independently of where they are located. So yeah, that's a very good point.
Mm-hmm. In the meanwhile, I'm also seeing in the chat from Francesca being healthy physically and psychologically. I definitely wish everyone takes more care about their personal well-being, both physically and psychologically, and we should talk more about it, I think, as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think I always think maybe I'm just a short-termist. I never really think beyond next week, even when I was still in high school. I never knew when the schools were closing. I'd only know like the week before. Actually, throughout my entire schooling days, because I think the presence is the greatest gift that we need to really start immersing more of ourselves in, because tomorrow dynamics change so much. I mean, we on the 100-year pandemic, which is not looking like it's going to bottom out, even though we're really planning a hybrid return back to work. In South Africa, we're talking vaccine mandates. Then bosses are also talking mandatory kind of return to work, but we are about to start now the fourth wave, right? So the apprehension of people like myself who've been through a COVID process, and the apprehension of those who are not vaccinated, and the apprehension of those who've also lost people to this pandemic. When we think about 5 to 7 years, that seems like a very long time, right? Because right now you have kids that you look at every day that it really terrifies you. What would have happened to you should you have not made it? And you want to live with them, not for them. So you want that process of being there, present, enjoying the moments with them. And if tomorrow comes and all of you are still there, you want that to still be a celebration. And if you wake up and it's 5 years from now, oh my goodness, then you will pop the champagne then. But you don't wait for the 5 years, because the special moment is now, right? It's I think it's realizing the fragility of what makes you want to do the work that you do, of wanting to be the best that you can be. It's not just for yourself, it's for this cherished little things, this connections with people that you have, the parents, the friends, the family, and you want those moments to really, really be worth it every single day.
Wow.
And maybe what you are saying, Tshepo, is also leading us into our next question, because of course, I mean, I also hope that we will live a more balanced life, and somehow with that, I'm kind of just hoping that we learn with this period of time that really we cannot really plan. Yeah, we knew that before, but now we are more and more aware. And I just wish we all had the ability to live like Tshepo, to stay in the moment and look not very far away. And when we do something, really also to have the ability to question ourselves. So why am I doing what I'm doing? Like calling my colleagues into the office. So why do I really need them? And do I really need them? Or jumping on that plane, do I really have to travel to see that client? Or maybe it's not really necessary, because now we know we have the experience that we can do things differently as well. So I'm wishing ourselves to bring this questioning mind before we're doing something, instead of kind of wishing back what was before, looking forward to check every action. Why am I doing this? Is it really necessary? How else can I do it? So kind of to be there and be inquisitive about the opportunities. And coming back to a closer thing, maybe our question is now thinking you closer to the now, and bringing you closer. What rituals or tips? I mean, we've been trying to collect here and shower you with ideas and tips and hints, and each other, of course, also in this panel. So what tip is that you are taking away with yourself? Something that you would be curious to experiment with your team or with your clients, with your customers, to make hybrid work and be human in 2022?
I'm thinking about the social stand-up for at least a week, maybe prior to Christmas. That would be fun.
Yeah. Others, any tips, hints, or in the chat, they are welcome also. And it's not necessarily what you've heard, but of course, what all that you heard suddenly inspired you to think about, I haven't tried that yet. Maybe I'll try it.
Or something that you haven't shared so far and want to say that you are thinking about experimenting with a new way of working or a new program.
I think, Elvira, you inspire me with the social stand-up. At some point you mentioned it's also like a way to start the day together. And I'm just thinking, because I'm really big on rituals for our team, but is there a way to signal all of us going off for Christmas as a team? And so, because everyone is just flexible with their schedule and it's just very difficult to find the right time, but is there something that we could do on the last day of work, considering that most of us will be taking off all the Christmas days, that we can do as a ritual all together as a team to really signals as sort of closing our computers and disconnect? And it just gave me a bit of an inspiration, it sparked up this idea. So I'll see what I'm able to come up with.
Well,
I think one of the, sorry, you want to go first?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I think one of the smart things I've seen around ritualing was, it was at the time it was paper based, where you put, how are you feeling today? So you pick an emoticon and you put it on your desk, and that kind of gives like the weather for how is Tshepo today. So I think when we go back to hybrid work, we're going to obviously find people who come with all different sorts of things. So we need a way that we will, before we engage, actually know how they're feeling, right? So, I mean, knowing if today I had a crying baby the night before, you know that my nerves are short because I'm short of sleep, right? So I think if we can get like digital ways to check in, that gauges the temperature of our team members, it will be something that for me I'm looking forward to implementing, so that I know beforehand, either on my way to work or when I'm at work, that I can talk to Elvira today because she's feeling very green, very chappy. So why not go and, absorb some of that energy from her? And if I know that Press today actually is not feeling too good, is there a way that I can, go about and make your day feel better? So that kind of empathy building in how we're gonna interact, I think will become more crucial. I don't think, I'm very bad with small talk, so I don't think people want to go back to the office for small talk. But when they're trying to come there and collaborate, make sure that you know how to talk to them in a way that shows care, that shows empathy, that shows consideration.
I love that idea, because that's what you read in the first few seconds when you are meeting someone in person, right? You can totally scan them and read their energy. So I love that idea. I was just gonna say, and to what Giulia was saying, that I love that. I need to try how to make that work across too many time zones. You know what I mean? Because it's like from India to the West Coast. That may be a bit difficult, but I love that idea. Like, close and bye. See you next year.
Thank you so much, everyone, for participating in this rapid fire action planning type of questions that are more flexible and were more spontaneous in that way. I personally really enjoyed it. And I also looking forward to keeping in touch and see what are the practices that everyone has been adopting. And maybe we should check in sometime how the world is changing, and let's exchange some ideas then as well. So with that, I would like to close our event, and thank you for everyone. First, thank you for the panelists for such inspiring ideas to share. Thank you for coming here, and thank you everyone as well for attending our event. Hope to see you again, most likely next year. We will have a long break to recover and recharge.